Hello friends, today in the UDS series we are going to start the in detail video on the UDS services. The first and foremost service which we are going to discuss in this video is the Diagnostic Session Control service. The UDS service, that is 10. I am Shambat. So let us start this course. Okay. So what is DSC? The service hexadecimal 10 service. So what is the Diagnostic Session Control? It is a UDS service for controlling the diagnostic session of the ECU. This service is used to change the current diagnostic session of the ECU is in to a different diagnostic session. It's a UDS service. What does it control? It controls the diagnostic session of the ECU. If ECU is in a particular diagnostic session, let's say X, then if you want to go to Y diagnostic session, to make that change happen, we use this diagnostic session control service. So the client, which is the tester here, and the server is the ECU. Okay, you know that the UDS communication happens in the client server model. So UDS service 10, that is diagnostic session control request, will be sent to change it to session Y. Then if it is properly, the request is proper and everything is okay in the ECU, then you will get a response, positive response. Otherwise you will get a negative response for this UDS service, right? If you are getting a positive response, then the session before the request is made, the ECU is in session X. Then if it is successful, then it will be made in session Y, and then a positive response will be sent. If we are not able to change the diagnostic session, then we will keep the ECU in the session X only, which is previously the session which it was there, and then we will send the negative response. It's a negative, or we will send a positive response if it is changed to Y. Otherwise, we will keep it to X. Then the SID, the service ID for this hexadecimal 10, is not the decimal value 10. Remember that it's hexadecimal. In decimal, this value will be 16. Okay. So it's a hexadecimal 10, and this has subfunction present in it, and the service request message format is the 10, which is SID, and we will send a subfunction. The subfunction denotes which diagnostic session you are trying to move to. Okay, each diagnostic session will be assigned with a particular subfunction, so which will be used in the request message format. And then if it is positive response, then what we will get subfunction 50, that is 40 is added to the SID of request message. Then the subfunction will be given here, and then some two more parameters called P2 server max and P2 start server max will be there. This is 1 byte and this is 3 bytes. Before understanding this diagnostic session control, we need to understand what is exactly a diagnostic session. So as you know, ECU follows OBD standards. What is OBD? Onboard Diagnostic. Means the capability of the ECU to diagnose itself and note the malfunctions which is happening in the ECU and store them. So depending on these different diagnostic situations, like whether the ECU is doing the OBD, when the car is running, then the diagnostic is happening. So if some malfunction has happened and all, then you have to connect the ECU to a tester tool, and then you have to trigger some functionality. So when ECU is talking to a tester, then it's a different diagnostic situation, right? So for that, a separate session is there. If you have to upgrade the software, if you have to read the software application, then we will be connecting another flashing tool and we will flash the software into the ECU, right? So this is a different diagnostic situation. So depending on these different diagnostic situations, the ECU can be in various types of sessions, and each of these sessions or each of these diagnostic situations is diagnostic session. Okay, so depending on the situation, that is whether normal car is running, ECU is performing its normal work, that is one kind of session, diagnostic session. if the ECU is connected to a tester, offboard diagnostic is happening. That is another kind of a diagnostic session. And then when a flashing of the software, upgradation of the application is happening, that's a different diagnostic session. When safety critical functionalities are being triggered, then that is a different kind of a diagnostic session. So depending on these various diagnostic situations, various diagnostic sessions are being created. Those things are given here. Default diagnostic session, extended diagnostic session, programming diagnostic session, safety diagnostic session, and etc. That is why etc. because more diagnostic sessions can be configured in the AutoSAR configurator. Okay, in DCM it can be configured. Now, why do we need these diagnostic sessions? So these sessions are known as diagnostic sessions. These are used to enable or disable a particular set of diagnostic functions. Let's say we have ECU, which will be having various UDS services. What do you mean various UDS services? Each UDS service will be having its own code part and all, right? So these codes which implements the UDS services, usually all of them are not need to be enabled when the car is normally running because the tester is not connected. So when tester is not connected, then these will be disabled. And whenever the tester is connected to the ECU and a different session, diagnostic session called as extended diagnostic session is triggered, then when it is in the extended diagnostic session, then these services will be enabled so that the ECU can communicate with the tester with the UDS protocol and so on. And when programming session is triggered, then what? We have to program the new application into the ECU, right? So the control will move from the application part to bootloader part, right? So bootloader is the one which will be helping in flashing of the new software. So the control bootloader will be enabled and the control will be moved to bootloader whenever we are triggering the programming diagnostic session, right? So depending on this diagnostic session, a set of functionalities will be enabled or disabled. A set of diagnostic functions and features in the ECU will be enabled or disabled. Okay, that's why we use the diagnostic sessions. Now, basically, in general, there are three mandatory diagnostic sessions. Okay, one is the default diagnostic session, which is the ECU will be in this diagnostic session default, right? And then there is the second one, which is programming diagnostic session, which is required when you want to upgrade the software, change the software, put a new application. And third, which extended diagnostic session. That is, some extended functionalities of diagnostics are enabled. Okay. So, as I told, the subfunctions will denote which diagnostic session it requires. Alright. So, if subfunction is 01, 02, 03, then subfunction 01 is default, subfunction 02 is programming, subfunction 03 is extended. When ECU is in a particular diagnostic session and you want to change it to a different diagnostic session, then you will use this service diagnostic session control, that is 10 and the subfunction. If you want to move to programming, then 02. So this is the request format, right? Now, whether the ECU is in any diagnostic session and you want to move to different diagnostic session, then what are the different transitions possible? Now, the thing is, let's say the ECU is in default diagnostic session, right? So it's in 01. You want to move to 02. Okay? So then you will send 1002. Then you will get a positive response, that is 5002, and some P2 server max and P2 star server max will be given here. Then now if you send 10 03. So what are you trying to do now? From 02 to 03 you are trying to migrate. Is this possible? Will you get positive response? No, you will not get positive response. You will get 7F negative response for service 10 with a particular NRC which will explain. Why? Because transitions from any session to any session is possible or not, that is explained in this state machine diagram. So as you can see, the transition from default to extended is possible. Extended to default is possible. Default to programming is possible. Programming to default is possible. But the transitions from extended to programming or programming to extended is not there. So these transitions which are explained here, this is not possible. If you had another session also like safety, right, then from default to safety is possible with 10.04 and safety to default is possible with 10.01 only. Okay, but extended to safety and safety to extended not possible. Safety to programming, programming to safety is not possible. So in general, can I write default session and non-default session? This is possible, but non-default session 1 and non-default session 2. Between this transition is not possible. So let us understand our diagnostic sessions. So let us say you are driving a car. So you are driving a car normally. Okay. So some bugs or some malfunction has happened within the car and your dashboard is there and there is a mill lamp and it starts blinking. Okay, so what do you do? Because of an onboard diagnostics which is happening in the car, the monitoring is happening, and upon monitoring it has found a malfunction has happened which is severe, so a DTC is being recorded, and if the mill lamp is enabled, so the mill lamp will glow, telling that there is something serious problem with some functionality in your car. So you need to go to the garage and get it fixed, otherwise your car is going to face some serious problems. So get it fixed as soon as possible. So you go to the garage. Once you go to the garage, then how does the testing technician find out what's the problem? So he'll come, there is a OBD board here in the car, so he will connect a tester tool to it, and he will tell that okay, so I need to perform the offboard diagnostics now. Yeah, how does it do? So to enable the tester functions, first he has to tell the ECU that okay, I'm want to perform offboard diagnostics, so you go to the diagnostic session which is 03, external diagnostic session, go to that. So he will trigger 10.03. So tester is connected, so trigger the UDS actions, that is read the DTCs, whatever DTCs is there, he'll understand what does it mean, and then they're performing some routine control services or WDBI, various UDS services are there. So with combination of them, he is going to rectify the solution and then clear the DTCs by 14 service, that the problem is now fixed. So the DTC has to be cleared. He will fix, and then he finds that Okay, so the problem is identified, so he has to flash a new program. So what he'll do, he'll come back to diagnostic session, default diagnostic session, and he will enter the programming session. Right? So he'll enter the programming session and he'll get the new software and he'll update the ECU to the new software from tester to the ECU. He'll update that. Once he updated the software, then he'll come again back to default session and go to external diagnostic session, and then he'll check whether the problem is there or not. If there is no problem, then he'll tell that okay, the problem is fixed, so the car is ready to go, and he will release the car and he will pay the fees or the money charge, whatever is done, and then you will be on road again, and now the wind is no longer blowing and there is no problem with the car. So this is the usual way how these diagnostics happen in the real world, in the perspective of a car user. Right? Now, in this case, we had to do various things, like initially it was in the default diagnostic session, and then the tester is connected and it went to 03. Then he identified the problem and found out that software upgrade is required, so he went again to 01 and then triggered to programming session 02 when the controller went to bootloader, updated the software, then reset happened and again he went to 01. It will automatically go to 01 and then went to 03 and checked the problem is not there, and then disconnected the tester and the ECU automatically went to default diagnostic session. Right? So this various phases, their functionalities happened, right? So there are various diagnostic sessions. Default diagnostic session is the default session which is ECU is present in. When the tester communication needs to happen, the UDS services all has to be enabled. So you will go to extended diagnostic session, and if you want to program a new software, then you will go to programming diagnostic session. Right? So I guess with this example you have understood what's the diagnostic session. If you are not clear, then in the comment section or in Q&A section, please post your questions and I'll try to clarify the doubts which you have. Okay? So the UDS request response sequence. So as you can see, this is a tester, which is a client, and this is ECU, which is acting as server in the UDS protocol. Okay, so now the tester is connected to the ECU network. Then you want to perform the offboard diagnostics, so you send 10, which is SID, and 03, which is you want to move to extended diagnostic session. So the ECU is currently in default diagnostic session. Right? So from default to extended, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. So it will move to extended diagnostic session and then send a response. The SID for positive response, you add hexadecimal 40, right? So 10 plus 40 is nothing but 50. So 50, and then the subfunction, and then I told this is a P2 server timer and this is P2 star server timer. Now, what does this P2 and P2 star server timer do? To answer that question, you need to see, so when a tester sends a request and a response has to be sent, right? So how much does a tester has to wait to get the response? Does it wait for say 1 second? Does it wait 10 seconds? Does it wait 1 hour? How much does it have to wait? So the ECU is computing the positive response or negative responses, say. So how does the tester know that how much time I have to wait, Baba? So for that, now as you know, the session has been moved out of the default diagnostic session. So all the UDS services are going to be enabled. So since they are going to be enabled now, I need to know that what is the wait for positive response, how much time I have to wait. So for that, there is two parts in UDS protocol. Let's say if I tell less time to wait, then it's not proper. Sometimes the ECU may require more time to compute a positive response and send. On the other hand, if I make the value as a max value, then what will happen? Lot of time waste will happen. The diagnostic part will be taking a lot of time. The tester will keep waiting, whereas the ECU might have been disconnected, right? So to make a compromise, a particular NRC called as 78, hexadecimal 78 was introduced, which tells request received, positive response pending, request correctly received, RC request correctly received, positive response pending. Okay, so it assures that the ECU is connected. Don't worry, we are still need little bit more time to compute the positive response, and once it's done, then we will going to send you the positive response. Now there is a limit, so there are two time triggers, that is the minimum time between which the ECU is supposed to send a response. Mandatory response is required. It can be a positive or NRC 78. Okay, if it says NRC 78, then few more time is required. Then in this time it has to send one more time and one more last. Right? So this is one time, and then there is a upper time limit where it can no longer send NRC 78. It has to send either a positive response, or the tester will consider there is no response. Response is not happening, so it will drop that service. This time which you talked, where a single response, a response is mandatory, either a positive response or a negative response, or a negative response with NRC 78 is must. That is, that maximum time limit for a response is called as P2 server max. Okay, this time. And since here request is sent, and the maximum total time limit which is given here, the maximum limit for the ECU to definitely send a positive response. If a positive response is not sent, then it will be considered as a no response sent. That maximum time is P2 star server max. Okay, so that one will be two parameters. This is required because the server configuration, so these two, P2 star and P2 server max, these two are configured here. So now we are entering a extended diagnostic session or a non-default diagnostic session is being entered, right? So you need to tell the client that in the further request whichever you are going to send, how much time you are supposed to wait before getting a response, the maximum time which you have to wait. If that time is crossed, then you can assume that response is not happened. Okay, that information will be given by this P2 server max and P2 star server max. Okay, so the thing is, if this is a ECU, let's say here, first let us understand. So this 32 is there, right? So 32 means it is hexadecimal 32. In normal it is 50. For P2 star, the resolution decided by UDS is 1 millisecond. So it's 15 millisecond. Then the P2 star, so hexadecimal 1388. This is in decimal, it will be coming to, so in hexadecimal 1388 will become in decimal 5000, right? So and the resolution for P2 star server timer is 10 milliseconds in UDS. So 50k milliseconds. So kilo and milli goes, so 50 seconds. So it has to wait for 50 seconds before getting a positive response. So now let's say in our case a request has been sent for UDS service, but if you requires more time, let's say 50 milliseconds has happened, the response is not yet ready, so it will send NRC 78. It is supposed to send NRC 78. Otherwise, the tester will think that response is not come and will move on. 50 milliseconds has happened, so it has sent NRC. 100 milliseconds has happened, so again it requires more time to compute the positive response. So one more 78 is being sent, then 150, one more 78 being sent, right? So 200 and all. Let's say in 200, let's say at 180 the positive response is ready, so it will send the positive response. On the other case, let's say this positive response is not there, 200 it went sent, one more 78 and 50 seconds happened. So this is 50 seconds upon that 1 millisecond. In this case, this has happened. So P2 star server max is crossed. So the tester will assume no more request is there. So it will try to send one more request, or it may not send one more request. So it will not wait for the response. So it will consider the response is not come and it will move on. So that's the meaning of P2 server max, P2 star server max. Okay. So this is one of the response property which is being sent by the EC. So with this extended session requested by tester and extended session was granted with these P2 and P2 star properties. Then now the ECU is in what? In extended diagnostic session. So now it's requesting 1081, right? So we know the subfunction about 01, 02, 03, in safety cases 04, some part. 81 means what? Hexadecimal 0x81. This means the function is configured. No. So the subfunction is 1 byte, right? So 1 byte means, let me put that here, and is 8 bits. This one is a MSB, right? And in subfunction, the MSB is always positive message suppression bit. Okay, so these parts will tell what is the diagnostic session. These 7 bits together can represent what is the diagnostic session, and this one will tell whether positive response is there or not, record or not. So 81 will be 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 1. So the diagnostic session requested is 0 1 only, but with the positive suppressor message bit set to 1 enabled. So it means here you can see 1081 is requested, Then what happens? The ECU will move again to 01. Default diagnostic session is entered, but like here how it sends a positive response, here it is not sending a positive response. Why? The positive response is being suppressed because it's requested that you don't have to send a positive response because of MSB is being set in the subfunction. Now it will send 1021. Let's say that the function 21 is not configured, right? So 10, so it is requesting for a diagnostic session control, diagnostic session change, but it is requesting for a diagnostic session which is not configured. Then what happens? It will send a negative response. That is negative response 7F for each service 10, and this is NRC. NRC stands for negative response code. The code which will tell the reason of why the request is rejected. Reason for rejection will be told by NRC. So this 12 is a code which tells that the subfunction is not supported. So when you see this NRC in the negative response, it helps the tester to understand what was wrong that this request is rejected. So it will come to know that 21 is not supported. Okay, so that's where we come into picture of negative response. But before, with this slide, what did we understand? We understood the meaning of P2 server max, P2 star server max, positive response message suppression bit. Then we understood about the NRC part. NRC, what is NRC happening, right? So what are the different NRCs supported for this diagnostic system control part? UDS gives various NRCs for all the services, but only some NRCs are reserved, or where some NRCs are applicable for certain UDS services. So for this service, which is a service which you are having, the diagnostic session control service, for this mainly 3 NRCs are there. One is a 12, which is of subfunction not supported. Second is incorrect message length or invalid format, right? Then NRC 13 will be sent. For example, if you just send 10, right, you need 10 and a subfunction, so 2 bytes are minimum required, but you are sending only 1 byte here. In that case, you will get 7F 10 13. Okay, and then the conditions not correct. For example, the condition is not correct, so it's in default session, so you will go to 10.03 and you will enter extended session, and you will get 50.03 and blah 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 P2 star and P2 server max and P2 star server max. Then you will request 10.02, right? So extended to programming you requested. So the condition for entering programming is it should be in the default session. So this condition is not met. From extended to programming you are trying to show. So the conditions are not correct. So you will get 7F 10 22. You will get this response. Okay. So these are the 3 subfunction and negative response codes which are supported. So if none of these matches and there is still some problem for the ECU to not perform the request, then what will happen? The NRC 10 will be sent. NRC 10 is nothing but general reject. Okay, so 7F 10 will be sent. So if for any services, any UDS services, not only for diagnostic control, if any of the NRCs which are applicable for that service is not applicable in the reason for which the service cannot be performed, then you will go for the NRC 10, which is nothing but general reject. Okay. So let's summarize. DSC, Diagnostic Session Control, is a UDS service to change the current diagnostic session of the ECU. Yeah. So if it's in a particular diagnostic session, if you want to change the diagnostic session to a different diagnostic session, then you will go for this service DSC. The SID is 10, hexadecimal 10. It has subfunction, and if the subfunction is OR with hexadecimal 80, that is making the MSB as true, then positive response will be suppressed. ECU can enter non-default session only when tester is connected, right? Because the UDS request is sent by tester only, else it's always in default diagnostic session. That's hence the name default diagnostic session. Okay. So there are usually 2 non-default session and 3 in case of safety critical ECU. That is extended session, programming session, and in safety critical, then safety session. Okay. More diagnostic session can be configured in the configurator in DC. That's possible. P2 server max and P2 server max timer values are communicated to the tester with the response of this UDS service, which I have already explained. And 3 possible NRCs in negative response is possible, not considering the general reject, of course, for this UDS service except general reject, right? So which are then the subfunction not supported, incorrect message length, invalid format, conditions not correct. This NRC is of highest priority. Next comes the priority of NRC 13, and next comes the priority of NRC 22. Okay, so this is what we understood. So with this explanation, I think you understood the diagnostic session control UDS service. So 2 questions for you, which I think you can research and get the answer, and you can comment in the comment box for the answer. If you are not able to find the answer for this, then definitely I will be making different videos in which I will be explaining the answer to these questions to you. Okay, the first question is, so how do you know which is the current diagnostic session in the ECU? Okay, so in order to change the current diagnostic session, what if you are already in the extended session and you want to come to extended session? So isn't it good to know what is the current diagnostic session, and then after understanding the current diagnostic session, you can think of changing it to different diagnostic session, right? So how do you understand, how do you know, what is the method to know what is the current diagnostic session in the ECU? Yeah, so the hint is a DID. You can make of what it is. And then how long does the ECU stay in a non-default diagnostic session? Okay, let's say if the ECU is connected to tester and you are requested to extend the diagnostic session, and because of some problem the tester gets disconnected, so does ECU stay in default diagnostic session only, in extended diagnostic session only, right? So there should be some limitations or some way to know whether tester is connected or not connected, whether it's disconnected or what, right? So that it can fit the non-default diagnostic session and enter the default diagnostic session. So how long does the ECU stay in non-default diagnostic session, and what is the mechanism to know whether the tester is connected or not? Is a question. The hint is S3 timer. Okay, so these 2 are the questions. Try to Google it, go to various automotive based topics, UDS based blogs, and try to understand it. And if you already know the answer, please comment it in the comment box for us, or you can put it in the Q&A chat box. You can put the question this and you can put the answer as well. Alright? So that's it from this video. Thank you guys for understanding and your time. Please like my video. Yeah. Have a nice day. Bye.